Hello, this is Dale Matthews, and I'm inviting you to join Mike and I on our show about politics and music. Hello, Mike.
And music. I have no idea what you're talking about. Were we? Oh,
Right.
Pink Floyd. Yes, of course. I,
Right.
I, I really, Dale usually puts something up that has some relevance to something that's going on here, but
There's
apparently
no relevance today at
this
all.
has no relevance to anything except Dale's shirt.
That's right. Well,
Yes.
I decided to put this shirt on because I haven't worn it in a while, and some of the others are getting kind of there's not smell-o-vision, but yeah. So anyway, and I was thinking I put this on, and we do know some people who would say, "Does this mean you're a communist?" No. No, it means I need to do the laundry. Oh, does it mean that you're controlled by the International Banking Consortium? No, it doesn't mean that. Well, does it mean you're gay? No, it doesn't mean that either. Even if I'm a gay communist, it's not going to walk around wearing a shirt. So, in fact,
Yes.
if I was a gay communist, I probably wouldn't wear a shirt at all. There's
Yes,
so
you
there.
probably wouldn't. All you have to do is go see the Gay Freedom Parade there in San Francisco to know
That's
that. Yeah.
right. That's exactly right. Okay, so we have headlines for you today. Now, so we've noticed a number of things. Our show about the disasters involved with the commissioners, not only did it ring true with a lot of people, but they really seem to like it. And also this little thing that I've decided to do as kind of an experimental basis, see how you like it. Headlines for those who don't have time for anything. And so we put up the headlines, and then you can get up to speed. I talked with Bill Hunker today, and I said, Bill, we like you. We'd like you to come on our show and talk about your general feelings of what's happening. He says, I've been gone for 2 weeks or out of the loop for 2 weeks. There's so many things that are happening. I didn't realize that many things could happen in 2 weeks. What do you think, Mike?
I think you're right about that. A lot has been going on, and I wish that Bill would come back because I kind of miss him being here on Fridays.
Well, he had a bunch of family things. People came over and they stayed around a lot and all the rest of this. He mentioned something interesting to me, and I'm not going to get anybody in trouble because we don't know who they are. But so family came and they had some teenagers, and Bill and his wife said, "Oh, why don't you just go ahead and amuse yourself with the internet?" Which they did, and
No,
used up all of their time. See,
of
they're not used
course.
to having time that you can only do a certain amount, and they used it all in one evening, their whole
Oh, yeah.
month.
Yeah, well, they watched a bunch of video. That's, video can eat up gigs and gigs of stuff super fast. But there's really, if you live in one of the outlying areas that isn't covered by DSL, now you can go with satellite internet, if you don't mind not being able to send any large files out because the upload on those is awful, and then the download is, it's pretty good on it, but you cannot have a voice over IP conversation. You can't do Skype because it will not connect. There's too much latency happening there.
Half of our audience is like, "Whoo,
Well,
there's
no,
too much
but
latency."
no, this is interesting because a lot of the people who watch this show, or um they may have friends that live in outlying areas, because there's a lot of outlying areas in the county that are not covered by DSL. They're not covered by charter cable or whatever, and so they're probably on dial-up or something, or they're using a satellite internet or something wireless. If I were out somewhere in an outlying place in the county, I would definitely look into wireless internet. Go with either budget or outreach internet. They both have a solution for that, and you can get some really ripping fast speeds and get off of this. Oh, I've only got 5 minutes of internet left. Oh no, because that's crazy.
Oh, well, I kind of like that sound effect. Those of you who don't know what we're talking about, you just find a friend that's latency intolerant,
Yes,
and they'll explain it to you.
yes,
Can't wear certain kind of gloves.
yes.
Okay, so
That's
I'm gonna.
that's not what it is.
That's not latency intolerant. Oh no,
No.
that's like you can't drink milk or something like that. Okay.
Okay. Listen. Let me just indulge me for a minute. Latency all it is in the case of satellite internet is that it takes so long for the signal to get from here to the satellite in space and then back down to the place where your internet gets fed in. So the a satellite's probably 22,000 miles above the Earth. At the speed of light, it takes a long time. It is several seconds of latency. That's what latency is.
186,000 miles per second,
Per second.
300,000 kilometers per second is the speed of light.
Yes. However, you have the direct distance above the Earth to the satellite, but you're probably hitting it at a diagonal, which may well make it 30 to 50,000 miles. And, so that's 50,000, and then it goes back and forth. And anyway, you cannot sustain a conversation with that, as we know on this show.
Sometimes I can't do it with Mike. That's right.
Yes.
Okay, so going to fill you in about a couple of details of things that we found recently. And for some of you, it's a little bit of repetition, but for others, it's not at all. So Mike and I uncovered one of the key advisors to Keith Heck. He's there at the beginning and end of every weekly business session. He's there at the beginning and end of every most important meeting of the week is the admin meeting on Thursday. And this guy's attitude, and he is one of the key advisors to Keith Heck, this guy's attitude is that...
Can that be said?
Well, he
goes up and talks to him.
No, he gives him advice, and he gives him advice twice a week, 4 times, 2 days a week, 4 times. That's a key advisor, buddy. Okay. I mean, and it's at all the important meetings, at the 2 most important meetings, not the little back room meetings that are general discussion, but occasionally he's there. It's these other important meetings. He is a key advisor to Keith Heck, and Keith's always happy to see him, and he always has something, advice to give him. Similar to someone who might send, let's say, a text message on a constant basis to Simon here. We're wondering who was text messaging him during a weekly business session, because you'll be talking and Simon's, thumbing his way through a message and answering and sending it out and having it come back. Who the heck is that? Well, now we know who at least one of them was. So and this fellow's reaction is that people who voted against the levy, he just came out and said it, should be murdered in their homes.
Yeah, or actually, that it would be better if someone was going to get murdered, that it be, an anti-levy person as opposed to a pro-levy person. I think that's the point he was trying to make.
Yes, that's
I don't think that
characteristic.
Yes, it is. I don't think that he was saying that anti-levy people should be murdered in their homes. All of them. He may believe that, but he didn't say that.
But he also said that, and he said it in the past to me privately, and he said it when we were sitting there with him in the hallway, is that the people who did not vote for this last levy, you never hear anybody from the anti-levy side say this kind of stuff, that they should be made to suffer. And that they should have to be aware of the price that everyone pays because of their negligence, and that they do not want law enforcement of any kind in this county. Did he not say that?
Yeah. That's just stupid. That's just dumb. And you would think that they would be saying that for political effect, but the campaign is over, and he's sitting here talking to us in the hallway, and he knows where, I'm sure he knows where we stand on this. And yet he's saying stuff like that. Why would you say stuff like that if you didn't believe it? But then, and listen, to some people, this won't mean anything, but
does anything that we say mean anything to some people? No.
Yeah, I don't know. His phone started making noise during the meeting, and he's seated right, to my right-hand side. And he pulls his phone out of his pocket, and it's wrapped in an Obama Biden phone cover. Listen, I have, advocated for certain presidential candidates before. I've never put their bumper stickers on or put something like that on my phone. You have to be in the tank for that. So that basically just tells some of our audience what you need to know about that guy.
Well, there's another person that gets a lot of advice from her political party. That's Cheryl Walker. And we saw, and Mike will always remember what Pat Bath had to
Wow.
say about people who come to the weekly business session. How should they comport themselves according to the Democrat Party, Mike?
Well, they should shut up and never say anything, for one.
They should always say things that are constructive and
Oh yeah.
positive. It should
Yes.
be a requirement now at a weekly business session that people in the audience are respectful of authority, that they
Yes.
mostly sit quietly with their hands folded in their lap. I think that's fair to say that that's what she feels, and Pat Bath, I think she's the secretary of the Democrat Party, says that people should be positive and constructive. And you've heard Keith X say this, and Simon Harris. Well, I think what people should be positive and constructive. You know what? Getting rid of the
Yes.
three of you would be a very positive, very constructive thing to do,
Yeah, but
because
positivity and constructive, those are very subjective terms. And one person's one a thing that is constructive to one person is
destructive to
demolition
another.
to another.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
exactly.
like when I tried to show everybody that Simon Harris really did say something, he said, and he cut the power and said, that's disruptive. It would be disruptive if he wants to hide the truth from you. It was real easy to see. Okay, so here's a couple more things. So I would call this fake hemp farmers. It turns out that Commissioners Hare and Walker may have cooked up a scheme to appear as if, maybe, as if they're hemp farmers. Hemp
Mm-hmm.
farmers. Well, if hemp is not allowed to wipe out the cannabis crop in Josephine County, they stand to make a huge profit, it's possible, from plowing under their sudden new interest in hemp.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think we know about this, Mike? We're trying to put two and two together. We're trying to connect the dots, which Simon Harris says is impossible to do. What do we
Yes.
know?
Well, we were at the weekly business session here the other day, and somebody got up there and started talking about how Andreas Bleck may well be paid to not use water during the summer months or during a period when there's drought. And so there was, an extrapolation from that. Well, perhaps people who don't, get paid not to farm certain things, and that the commissioners, two of them, could well be playing that game in which they are to be paid not to farm hemp. And I think it likely. I mean, as I mentioned last night, this is a lot like insider trading,
Yes.
which for our senators and congressmen is not illegal. Imagine that. That it's not illegal for them to get a stock tip from somebody who has inside knowledge and for them to profit on it. Well, commissioners have access to a lot of information that we don't, so they're able to connect certain dots that we wouldn't be able to connect because we don't have that information. Well, I would not at all be surprised if this is the thing that's going on with this hemp situation. Exactly what you are speculating here, Dale, is that these guys are fake hemp farmers, and they're fake. They're hemp farming only for the purpose of being paid not to do it.
What a deal. These are our county commissioners. Okay, state investigation. It turns out that the Commissioners Hare and Walker, are being investigated by the Oregon State Ethics Commission for using our county offices to benefit their private business deals.
Mm-hmm. Shocking. How
Caught
could that
by
happen?
legal counsel. Turns out that all three commissioners had to be warned in writing by county legal counsel that they've been caught again breaking the law regarding open meetings. They were not happy to be reminded of this. They have always denied that, oh, that's not against the law. Why? We can do, as Keith Eck pointed out to me, we can talk about anything that we want, anytime that we want. Simon's re-election investor. Well, it turns out that all three commissioners have known for weeks now, a couple of weeks, that the drone project out of Ivy Airport has been permanently canceled.
Done deal.
Right. Now, I mentioned this to Bill, and poor Bill didn't know this. Oh, really? He was very interested in that. And if you miss our show, you can't even miss one night, then you might not know this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's major news. And has anybody reported it since then?
Zero.
Since we put it out, and when was that? That was like Sunday or Monday?
Yeah.
And
also,
no one,
the weekly business session. No, nobody.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly. And Channel 10 was there. I mean, did they report on the big news? On the big drone project when it was when it came up the first time with all the fanfare? Maybe they did. And I'm surprised, but this gal who was recording it, she doesn't know what's going on. She probably wasn't here. She probably wasn't working for them at the time when that was going on. They go through employees like hamburger joints.
Yeah.
So
credit to borrow money. Okay, you've heard this before. Turns out that all three commissioners have known for weeks now that sales job that Simon Hare did on Moody's, the guys that look into your credit rating, that's just about as accurate, just about as false as their credentials for openness, because that project, Moody's said this is the best thing that's happening in the county, and it turns out that it was just all false, and we knew that it seemed to smell from the beginning. Okay, and then when we looked into it, and we're finding that you can't even contact these guys. They don't even have one of those old-fashioned 80s phone answering deals that clicks on and it tells you, nothing. And then their international headquarters, there's nobody there to answer the dang phone.
Yeah, and you know what? This really should throw a light on Jim Frick. That listen, Jim Frick, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, really, I
agree.
He's very good with people, really, really nice. But he was in this up to his eyeballs, and he got really, really ticked off at all these nervous Nellies. I think I'm going to move to Idaho. Well, Jim, we were right about that. We were right to be skeptical about that. And, you can't blame the failure of this whole thing on the people who were questioning it from the get-go.
Oh, I think they would if they could. Okay?
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
I've mentioned it a couple of times that the clerk, who's up for re-election in a year, has said that those who question government, he means us, Mike, that we're those who question government, local government, are morons.
Yes. And it really kind of is turning out that if you don't question government, you're a moron.
Okay, and then maybe the top story. This is one of the. This isn't necessarily a breaking story, but it may cascade into the biggest thing of all. Millions of dollars wasted. Now, it turns out that all three commissioners have known for weeks now that the entire North Valley Industrial Park project may simply be turned over to the city, to Grants Pass City, in a few years. Tell us a little bit about that, Mike.
Well, you know more about it than I do, but Keith Heck, during one of the backroom meetings, and in a surprise announcement to Cheryl that, the North Valley Industrial Park's just going to revert to the city in about 12 years. think I'll continue with my nails here or whatever. And Cheryl went agape.
She
And
did.
and that's the last we've heard of it. Have you heard anything else on that?
Yeah. I went and I talked. Well, of course, I talked to Wally Hicks, and I said, "So, Wally, what's the story about this?" Now, you all know Wally by now. I mean, I like the guy, and he does things, but he's kind of reluctant to just accuse it. Well, I've been looking into this since I first came in office. You have? Really? Wally, that's 6 months. What prompted you to look into this from the beginning? Why would you be looking into this from your first day in office? Well, I've been looking into it, and I just don't quite know the answer.
Okay, and that's the news.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's going to be interesting because at one point in the past, there was a lot more money rolling into town, and the people in the county may have thought, well, we'll kick off this industrial park, and it'll be going great guns, and tons of profit will be coming in, and everything will be fantastic. And then, after a period of time, we'll turn the infrastructure over to the city, and then that'll keep pouring money into the county, with taxes and all that kind of stuff. It'll be fantastic. And but so that hasn't happened. It hasn't taken off like crazy. And if in 10 or 12 years it's supposed to go revert to the city, what incentive now would there be for us to like pour good money after bad into this project up there? I don't know, and I really don't know that much about the industrial park and whether or not it's growing or shrinking or what's going on. But I would imagine that whatever's happening with it is tied pretty close to the condition of the economy, which is not good.
Well, we do know that because it's part of the record, not just our record, but the county's record, that Cheryl Walker has been caught several times saying things that are completely false. And one of them that surprised the school board, the Six Rivers, the
Three Rivers.
Three Rivers, yeah, Six Rivers is down in California. School board was that they were fully on board. And they said, no, we're not. Well, Cheryl Walker went to the state's Infrastructure Finance Authority and told them, yes, they are. Cheryl, that's a complete lie. And
Yes.
and they're talking about it. She's talking about it with Rob Brandis, who's saying, well, I'll go and I'll talk to him. And he's saying, and she's saying, oh, Rob, well, I never said that. Rob, it's on tape. Well, talk with Keith Hick. He'll explain to you why tape cannot record him correctly. Just one more point. And
Okay.
he's saying, well, once we get the money, then they're going to come on board because they'll want some of that money. That's not exactly the same as saying they're on board now.
Yeah. And here's a goofy thing. I mean, if there's some reason that we need to do this, then that would be fine. Hey, people are knocking at our door. They want a place to, set up shop. We need to do this. Then that's a reason to, jump forth and put infrastructure in place. But there's a different motivation when you're a politician. When you're a politician and you have access to sources of money for one thing or another that you can pay off to, a local contractor, good old boy operation or something like this, then things are different. And you may be doing something, you may be building something that doesn't have a purpose outside of that function of taking money from the state and giving it to somebody for some perceived kickback or some benefit to yourself somehow or something like that. It's not necessarily that we actually need to dump a bunch of money into the North Valley Industrial Park.
Well, in order to get there, one of the things we had to say, or they felt they had to say, is that exit 61 is failing. You know how it backs up onto the highway every night? No, it doesn't. Yeah. It does not back up onto the highway every night. I've never seen it back up. People who live there have not seen it back up. Well, once it almost backed. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it could have. Yeah, no,
Money.
look, you're lying to us. What? So okay. So here's something to
Money.
watch. Oh yeah, yeah. Here's something to
Yes.
watch. There was a project, and I don't know whether it's moribund or not today, but this was a project with Herb Carter. Ooh, they're not going to like their names being mentioned, but that's what we do. Gerard Fitzgerald and Paul True, not Paul True, his brother, somebody else True, Ignatz True. Okay, so these three guys came in and lobbied the commissioners hard for something they call Project 61. And Project
Mhm.
61 was about grabbing up that what they felt was kind of a waste of space with the fair and moving the fairgrounds to a much handier location out in Merlin, and then
Mhm.
taking that prime real estate where the fair is now, and they would then get to, yes, develop that.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, now,
Right.
if it's not those guys, is it some other guys, the players that will be named later? Is it
Mhm.
some other people who've got a deal going on out there in Merlin and say, "Oh, buddy," and who's involved? And now that we find out that commissioners are involved in a business together and what it only looks like fake hemp farming,
Yeah.
you know, does it, what it does is it makes you wonder. It just makes you wonder, since we already know in several cases, we don't need to list them again for you now. You watch our show, that they've lied about some things and they've exaggerated about some things and they've faked on some things. And we know this is the case. So what are they going to do next? And do we believe them at all? And Keith Eckes is saying it means, well, I tell you, we had nothing to do with kicking off this levy and you're laughing out there. I should just not talk to you. Probably
Yeah.
so, Keith.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder what is going on also that we don't know about.
Right.
Because it's entirely possible that there are other things that we have no knowledge of. I mean, because that they don't like us having knowledge of and talking about certain things that they've done. Uh, I'm almost certain there are things that they're doing that we have no idea about.
Yeah, there's the news. Deet, 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 deet. Yeah, there are things they're doing that we don't know about. They don't even like Mike to take a tiny little microphone thing and put it on their table as any other news organization can do. We're the only ones that are there. Where is everybody else if they care? How come? I'm sure she's a lovely person, but why is it the person from Channel 10 turns up? It's the first time we've seen her there, or any of them from Channel 10, in months and months and months and months. I don't know, maybe since the beginning of the year, 6 months or more. Okay,
Yeah.
so when they show up in the little back room, they just go and they put it on the table and nobody says a word. Not you, Mr. Jones. You can't. What's
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, that's goofy. And but listen, I suppose that when you're the commissioner, when you're the chair, you can make decisions about who you want to be favorable and who you don't want to be favorable to. And people who criticize you, you can say, no, you can't keep your microphone on my table,
They don't
and
want an accurate recording of what they say, because I
yeah,
talked to Simon about it and he says, yeah,
and
I do talk kind
yeah,
of low.
his answer to that would be, I got a recording right here, and
Well, and he
we
said before, all it
are
counts is if
making a
the other
record.
commissioners can hear me. Really? In this most transparent government in the
Yeah,
entire
well,
world?
that's an entirely different thing, so I mean,
Okay.
there's you know
All
I
right.
don't
So,
know. I don't agree with it, but I guess if you want to reserve that, and let's say that you get somebody in there who's a decent person, and you get some counterculture press people in there hassling them constantly. Would you be okay with that chair saying, no, you can't put your mic on my table?
absolutely not. No
Okay.
way. Absolutely not. Look, we hang with some people who've got some pretty bizarre ideas, buddy. I mean, whoa, that's really weird. And you just let them have their time. You let them do their deal. And
Yeah.
I think it's great every time Rika Brown gets up to talk. I think it's wonderful. because she kills herself, buddy. I mean, what are you saying? And therefore, this fits in with the whole idea of picking up litter, because that's all we need to do to increase the economic development in Josephine County.
Yeah.
Okay. Or she says, this is why the lady from Channel 10 leans over to me and says, what was that? Rika's talking about having a county sales tax. The only problem with that is, I guess she doesn't watch our show on Sunday. What does the charter say about a county sales tax, Mike?
I don't know what it says about a county sales tax. I know it says that you can't have an income tax. And there may be a sales tax in there too, but I know that an income tax is prohibited, which seems odd to people. Like, income tax? Why would the county have an income tax? Well, some counties do. And
boy, if Cheryl got wind of the idea that you could have an income tax, she'd be all over it. Okay.
Well, and why would the charter stop them? Heck, it hasn't stopped them before.
No.
They violate all kinds of things the charter says.
Even the judge says you cannot say in your oath of office that you're going to follow the charter. Really? What kind of judge are you? Okay, not a very good judge of character. I intend to do so. So, given the chance, yeah, right. Okay, on the other hand, okay, so this one over here. So we got a chance to sit down with Vivian Kirkpatrick Pilger. She was one of the people that this guy was all over. Well, that person should, yeah, right, shut up. So anyway, she has been a person that's been given a lot of advice to Simon Hare in the past. She was a real Simon backer. You may be thinking at this point about, well, maybe we should recall all of them. We suggested that. And the people who turned it down were Ward Ockenden, Jim Dittmer, and Jack Swift. They didn't like that idea because they were backing Simon. We want Simon in there, buddy. Well, she was one of the people who thought it was a bad idea too. She has now changed her mind. Here's what Vivian Kirkpatrick Pilger, we may come in and comment, maybe we won't, we'll decide, it's our show. And here's what she had to say about conversations with Simon Hare, and drop your lower third and your socks, Mike. And here's what she had to say about her text conversations with Simon Hare, and what his feelings are about setting aside money for the sheriff, and they conversed back and forth. Here's some of his inside thinking. We'll also put this up as a separate video so that you can watch it in slightly better quality later after our show.
Need to worry about anything.
Okay, tell me when it started.
Started.
Okay. Dale has asked me to read a series of emails between Simon Hare and I regarding the roads dollars that we wanted, a lot of citizens wanted transferred to the patrols for our sheriff. And my screen just went blank. It started on Wednesday, June 6th, when I was home watching the commissioners meeting from my recliner. And there was no video on the screen. I could hear the audio, but there was no video. So I texted Simon because I know he can sometimes run in the back room and fix something. And I told him there's no video on the screen. I'm watching it at home. And then apparently he left his phone on his desk and he didn't get my message, but he answered later at 11:17. He said, I was late for the first time only by a minute. I left my cell at my desk. I'm not sure why there was no video. I'll check. And I said, well, about 7 minutes into the recording, the video came on. Good meeting. With what Wally's working on about JOCO is owed by the ONC, we may have an answer in 2 years if this gets filed soon. Then that million will be a true bridge to at least the next 2 years. Seems it's a point Cuffs and the anti-levy folks can all agree on. Unusual to see support from both sides for the same thing. I hope your fellow commissioners are going to be receptive to this. Simon says, I think I'm warming to the idea of using $500,000 over 2 years as a loan. Give a chance for Dave to try his rural resident deputy idea. I said, 500 per year? I said, what is the rural resident deputy program? Because I hadn't heard about it. And then he probably hadn't gotten those texts yet, but he said, no, I think I'm warming to the idea of using $500,000 over 2 years as a loan. He says, Sheriff Daniels wants deputies to live and work out of rural high schools, say IV and NV, North Valley and Illinois Valley. Under the current budget, we're able to maintain the current level of patrol. This would be in addition. I said, well, you can do the 2 million over 2 years. Remember, it's doable because I looked at the budget personally. And he said, well, we're stealing it, hopefully borrowing it from the road department, remember? And I told him, yes, but they also get grants for a number of their projects and they get their budget refilled by gas tax every year. We need more county patrols. That's what the levy pushers were saying, and me too. And we have had money stolen from us, the county, for years by the feds by not allowing the use of our land in Josephine County. And then we switched to Friday the 6th. I said, good morning, Simon. I just wanted to give you my thoughts on stealing money from the road department. Really, all the money we pay in taxes in whatever form was taken from the taxpayers to pay for what the taxpayers need their government to do. In times of short funding, all that money still belongs to all the taxpayers, not to any particular department. Department managers, and I know this because I used to be one, get possessive of their funds because it allows them to do a good job. But their department, should their department ever run short, you'd probably have to pull in other departments' contingency funds to cover for that department that ran short. This million could be a bridge for 2 years, allowing those crimes that the sheriff said were up 850% to be dealt with. Remember to take care of the other end. The DA needs help and no one gave them anything either. How do you prosecute crimes the sheriff has made arrests for? Why bother arresting people if we can't prosecute them? Well, I know you can't use road funds for that. It would free up funds to give to the DA if you gave $700,000 to the sheriff's department and then use the other money that was designated for public safety to the DA. Excuse me. I said, Simon, split the baby. DA, then he answered me and he said, the DA is taken care of because the payment was slightly higher than anticipated. I said, great. And he says, I hear you, but it's not that simple and hard to explain via text. How about the distrust that will be reinforced by those who will say, see, they found the money. We didn't find the money. We stole it from one kid and gave it to another. Also, this will likely take almost a year to see an impact, and then we will only get 14, 15 months without a long-term solution before we let those officers go. That's a very expensive 14 to 15 months, right? Excuse me. Then I said, well, there are officers that were laid off that are driving to the coast to work right now. That would seem a welcome relief if they were rehired here. And the cat's out of the bag now about the road dollars. Now your public awaits to see which commissioners will do the things most needed. If you don't give it to the sheriff, then it will confirm the wild belief that the commissioners just want to punish the citizens for not passing the levy. And may also confirm in many minds that the sheriff didn't need the money to start with. Be wise. These officers have even contacted people here telling them they would love to come back, and I don't know their names. And Simon says, okay, but threatening language has not been well received by the board. I frankly think they're kind of made up, and I know my decision certainly is not based on punishing the voters. I respect their decision. That's why after a $1.48 levy, I've never publicly supported a levy. Also, having voted all attempts to fund public safety down, does the public really want patrols? I think that's a very real question, don't you? My response was no. And I just left it lay there for a while. And then he answered me and he said, okay, I've been wrong before. There was that non-binding question 2 to 3 years ago where people said at 75% that the service level wasn't meeting their needs. And then I said to him, voting down a tax means we want our commissioners to do what it takes to get the sufficient and sustainable funding the way the county people know it can be done. When Walker got elected, she said it would cost too much to sue the feds. I remember those words as she spoke them. What has it cost us now? 3 or 4 Board of Commissioners ago, they should have started on that, but it's not too late. Please don't tell me you just said something else that was on there that I didn't want to mention. So, and he said never. And he says his phone doesn't lock, and he was on his ranch taking some trees to the mill to reduce fire danger around his parents' place. This could be a very scary summer. And I said, yes, please stay in one piece. The people need you.
Well, all I can say is, wow.
I said, wow, over back. It's
Oh,
very
yes.
interesting.
It's good that you explain that to people because they
Right.
wouldn't have known what you're talking
Well, but
about.
some people only listen to this, Mike.
No, that's true.
Okay. All right. So it's pretty interesting
That is
that
true.
your lower thirds is now continuing to be missing. But um, it's interesting, I think, that
Yes.
Simon, one of his prime concerns is what the other commissioners have said too, is that if they do this, it just proves that they did have the money and they could have done this and they didn't. What do we now know about the fact that they did have the money and could have done this in the past? Mike, what do we know?
Well, I just got an email from Margaret Goodwin here today, talking about this very topic here. So it's very timely. It says, Mike, the courier once again has gotten the facts wrong. I sent an email to Jim Moore explaining that the $1 million he said I was imploring the commissioners to allocate to public safety was not the same $1 million I moved to transfer from the roads reserve fund at the last budget committee meeting. This is new money that was not accounted for in the budget because the county didn't know it would be receiving this money at that time. He hasn't responded yet. It's important to understand that there are two types of federal timber payments in the county budget. One is the SRS funding, which is intended to help mitigate the loss of timber receipts on the O&C lands, which are managed by the BLM. The SRS funds go into the general fund so they can be used at the discretion of the commissioners with no restrictions. The other type of federal timber payment is Title I Forest Service payments, which are dedicated to roads and schools. These funds come from timber receipts on lands managed by the U.S. Forest Service. 25% must go to the schools and 75% must be used for roads. These are funds commonly referred to as road dollars. And these funds are the funds that HB 4175 specifically allows the county to allocate to road patrols at the county's discretion. I don't know the actual numbers for how much money was received from the Title I Forest Service payments. From the transcript of Arthur O'Hare's presentation to the commissioners on June 4th, it sounds like the $1 million he's talking about might partially be from SRS funds, but he doesn't specify, so that's impossible to tell. At the time of the last budget committee meeting on May 21st, we knew the county was getting SRS funding, but we didn't know the exact amount because there was a question about whether the funds would be subject to sequestration. And that's where you may remember a couple of years back, they passed something as sequestration. In other words, they take a certain amount out of each fund to cut the funding for, almost anything passed. And it's real political, but anyway, so at the time, okay. But we didn't know the exact amount because there was a question about whether funds would be subject to sequestration, like the rest of the federal budget was this year. The county budget was prepared assuming that those funds would be subject to sequestration because that seemed to be the most likely scenario. However, when the SRS funding came through, sequestration had not been applied, which resulted in an additional $614,000 of SRS funds over and above the amount budgeted. The DA had asked that the budget committee he had asked the budget committee for $160,000 to fund an additional prosecutor and legal secretary. The budget committee couldn't take the money from anywhere else in the budget, so we voted conditionally to allocate $160,000 to the DA out of the sequestration buffer in the event that sequestration wasn't applied. The budget presented on Wednesday was amended to account for that additional $160,000 to the DA's office, but subtracting that $160,000 from the $614,000 sequestration buffer leaves another $454,000 of SRS funds that have not been allocated yet. Because Arthur O'Hare mentioned the SRS extension at the June 4th administrative session, it's possible that the $1 million of eligible funds he referred to includes that 454,000. But the way he said it was ambiguous enough that it's also possible that the $1 million is all from the Title I Forest Service payments. Not knowing how much the actual Title I Forest Service payments were, it's impossible to tell. But if the $1 million is all Title I Forest Service payments, there might be another $454,000 of SRS funds available that could be allocated to public safety.
Now, the important thing, in my opinion, to take out of this, that's a lot of numbers. Okay. It's a lot of details, and not everybody can keep track of every detail, but we do have citizens.
We have some smart people, though.
Yes, we do have citizens, that's what I was about to say, who are following this, who are watching the commissioners, who are paying attention to what people like the finance director say and don't say. Imagine what would happen, because here's your solution to all this. If we had a couple of people in this county commissioners who were dedicated to serving you, to actually making you the boss, which I think is the case or should be the case, you wouldn't have to say, well, gee, I really wonder. You wouldn't have to wonder anymore. You wouldn't have to say, gee, what does he mean by this? I mean, where do these numbers come from? Because either that guy would tell us or he would be replaced. And you would see this information coming out just like this show. I mean, why do we exist? Good question. Why do any of us exist? One of the reasons we do is that we want to be sure that you get the information. We're not doing this for pay. They are. So what are they paid to do? To tell you the facts? Obviously not. What's the courier paid to do? To tell you the facts? Obviously not. Joe, forget that. Okay, so we're trying to tell you these things. Now, maybe you don't want to know. Why are you watching the show? But if you do want to know, we're dedicated to seeing that you get that information. And there's a lot of talented people who really do have, mostly from California or from some other business, where they do have this expertise and they know how to look at these things. Talk about forensic accounting. We got all the people that we need here. We're being blocked. We can't even record their conversations clearly.
Yes. Well, and listen, as it relates to this particular case, we really, and Margaret, we know that at least somebody from your family is watching tonight. We'd really like to get you on the phone for some back and forth on this, because more about this can be, or some more clarity can be revealed about this if we had a little bit of a back and forth to fully explain this. I think most people get that this would have been a fairly simple thing for them to do. This just happens to be a question of will. But it would be nice to have a little back and forth on that.
Why should it be necessary to wring the details out of their neck? Why is that necessary? When Sandy Casanelli said, hey, you know, this urban growth boundary, is it extending up into the Merlin area? Sure looks like it is. They gave her a black map, black on black. This is this administration. All blacked out. And if you ask the courier to settle this, it's a blackout on that news. You're not going to hear this. Where's their story about this? Some of this stuff is pretty important. Okay, so we're going to do everything that we can to bring it to you. We'll bring you our theories. We'll bring you our facts. We'll bring you insider information. We've got someone in the commissioner's office. We're going to get you all the information you can, or that we can, and all of it that you can take. And we will continue doing that for a year and a half until these characters are out of office and we can replace them with people who say, well, of course we're going to tell you all the details, and they actually mean it. That's all that we need.